Hello, hello. I am Erica Anderson, co-founder and chief customer officer for Storytel, and Grant Simmons, VP of Kochava Foundry, is here with us today to show us how he is using Storytel to seal the deal. And so before we get into that, would love to know where you're joining from. So we're representing California, Idaho, and the Philippines. And we are live streaming as well on our YouTube channel. So thanks so much for joining us. Really, really happy to have you here. Going to go through a little bit about Storytel and what we're up to in this webinar. So Angela is in the Philippines. She makes the webinars happen. So Angela, if you could go ahead and start screen sharing. Then I'll take us on a tour of what this is all about. So welcome to our Seal the Deal webinar with Grant Simmons at Kochava Foundry. And this is really about using AI to craft proposals that win clients, save time, and prove your value. And this is, Grant is gonna walk us through his entire process around that. So it's gonna be a
I don't know
real
about entire process. I don't want to bore these people to tears.
Okay, all right, the highlights of the process. Um, and as you'll see, we have a little poll coming through. We'd love to know where you're joining from, and what's your role? What are you working on? And what would you like to learn from this webinar? Okay, and let's go to the next slide. So I want to share with you a little bit about our kind of house rules here. What's happening? So we're recording this webinar and we're live streaming on our YouTube channel. So that means that we will send you a recording after the webinar with a blog post and just recap and all of that, using our product, of course, to create that. So any questions at any time, also just sharing where you're joining from, drop that in chat. You can also use the QA, but we'll kind of just answer them as we get to them. It might be at the end, it might be before, but don't let that stop you from sharing questions as they come up. And so why does Storytel exist? Well, the language that we use is this is our vision. We exist to make life meaningful by making work meaningful. And we refer to, Storytel as a collaborative intelligence platform. So not only does it help cross-functional teams get jobs done more effectively than they could on their own, it helps individuals do that too. And if you think about like, okay, why are we called Storytel? Well, we believe there's stories hidden in your data, especially in unstructured data, right? There's a lot of platforms to work with numbers, to work with structured data, and less so with unstructured. So essentially like getting telemetry from that unstructured data. And what Grant's doing is one example of that. If we go to the next slide, so what's one reason that you can use Storytel for work? Well, one, we really value your privacy. So large language models are not trained on your data. So we have our own algorithm that sits on top of the foundational models, and we use the enterprise API, which means that there's absolutely no training on your data whatsoever. Your data is safe and secure. It's not going to pop up for some other user or on the internet. Like that's just not happening. And then we are also SOC 2 Type 2 certified. So we have data encryption from end to end and when it's at rest. So again, data privacy, really important to us. And we're going through GDPR and HIPAA certifications right now. And let's pop to the next. Okay, so how we organize data. And largely, so we have two platforms. We have our original platform. That's largely what Grant is going to be showing. And right at the end, we'll just show you the beta, which is going to have the same approach to data, just with some different language. But essentially, so let's think about a file as one kind of atomic unit. You can actually break data down further, but we'll just stick with that for now. And a file You can have one file in a tag. So this is just for a different example. So you could have a tag around a webinar. And in that webinar, it's about supercharging content creation. So you upload a file to our original platform and you tag it webinar. Um, and it's not a talk, so you don't tag it talk, but you could have a group of all your company events. And one kind of event is a webinar, and another event is a talk. So, and then maybe you're going to run this content against your ideal brand voice. And so that's a different tag, but that tag is not an event. So you can see how there's like a Venn diagram aspect
Mhm.
to this of how files, in order to create a tag, you would need a file, you need to upload some content. It could be video, audio, text, etc., URL. And then you're tagging it, and then multiple tags can be inside a group. You could also just work with multiple tags. You don't have to turn it into a group. But one last thing to share on this is there's essentially, you could say, two approaches to data, is that it just lives in a folder and it doesn't live anywhere else, or this tagging approach that the same file could be in multiple tags. And that's the approach that we have taken. So this is probably our least thrilling slide to tell you, but I just want to give a little bit of context of how we're approaching organizing your data. Okay, now with that, I want to hand it over to Grant Simmons, who will be taking us on the highlight reel of how he's working with Storytel on proposals. And Grant, would love for you to introduce yourself, because I'm sure you're going to do a better job than me.
No, this is fun, and we'll do some of this in real time. And the nice part about there's a lot of things I like about Storytel. One of the things is it's very forgiving, meaning I don't have to get too pent up about if I, screw up the input or things like that. But I think to tell this story, the best place to probably start is like explain what the role is and what is the job. And so let me just sort of jump into that real quick.
Great.
Um, Kachava Foundry, the group I lead, is strategic consulting around digital marketing and specifically around mobile marketing. And so if you imagine, we got a handful of brands on the screen there, and they all spend in aggregate billions of dollars trying to get people to download their apps and do things in the app, right? So the install's nice, but if you can get if you're McDonald's, you can get a deal applied in the order, that's better. If you're a Burger King and you understand that there's lift in hamburger purchases based on app usage, that's very, very valuable. And so many brands have huge app growth strategies, and we work with those teams. We also work with the publishers who serve those ads, largely again a mobile sense. And so, the one thing we always like to say is, are you listening to your data? And there you see a happy little picture of me before the realities of mobile marketing set in. Look how happy I am there. But this is really it. And so this language, and I've been around digital marketing now for over 20 years, and stepping into mobile here about a decade ago, this thing has a language all of its own. And so I want to just sort of step through the types of things we do. And so the first one up there is we are strategic consultants to a handful of brands. And so they have growth marketing teams who are spending millions of dollars on app growth. And we work with those teams to come up with test and learning strategies to help them market better. And then if we look down one below that, advanced measurement. And so this is largely for the publisher set, out of home. And so you'll see a lot of billboards out there in the physical world telling you to do things digitally. And we have some unique abilities to be able to tie that together. Or, we all have smart TVs now. And if you were telling me 5 years ago that I'd be measuring eyeballs on the living room device, on that LG TV or the Samsung TV or that Roku device or that Apple TV, I would have said you're crazy, but here we are. We spend a lot of time understanding what is being shown on the living room device and what the couch sitter's doing, right? So we have some unique measurement methodologies there. The next one down is fraud, which is sort of interesting. Organized digital advertising fraud is still the second largest criminal enterprise on the planet, behind drugs, right? And it's just sort of interesting that we both call our customers users, right? You're a mobile user, you're a drug user, but the reality is that there's not a lot of risk, and there's a heck of a lot of reward. And so we've been expert witness on a couple major ad fraud lawsuits. You can go back and Google Kochava and BuzzFeed and see our sort of big outing of actually the owners of TikTok owned another company called Cheetah Mobile back in the day, and it was wildly fraudulent. You can read up on that. And so we spend a lot of time analyzing data and understanding the ad fraud. And then we have, a lot of artifacts, things that we've done just so many times that we wrap them into sort of an analysis package. We call those insight packs. And then through all this work, we might derive a unique metric that we now want to report out on an ongoing basis. And so we'll wrap a custom feed around that, or we'll build a custom model around it. So that's largely the job. And what you'll see is this thing has sort of its own unique language. And so, when we talk about fraud and efficiency, it's trying to understand all of the tactics that folks are applying in terms of the fraud. And it's happening on the ad signal level, where there's an ad that was reported to have been delivered that wasn't, or on the conversion signal in which there was an install or a customer sign up in the app that actually didn't happen either. And so, I could spend all day talking about this, but the point I'm trying to make here is this stuff is really, really complicated, and it has its own sort of unique language. And so, we can rip through a ton of analyses that we've done, and I've got this monster, 50-page deck to demonstrate all of these analyses. But suffice to say that each one of these has sort of a unique sort of pattern behind it, whether it's influence and overlap, or whether it's keyword performance on search ad buys, or things like that. And so the first thing is the collection of the knowledge. And what I tried to do originally is use ChatGPT for this. But there's a couple issues there. First off, if we go into the knowledge that I've uploaded, and I've uploaded probably, terabytes at this point, it's what I pulled off of website. It's analyses we've performed. I do a lot of like blog videos and vlog videos and ad tech trend videos around what's going on in the industry. It's actual analyses against different vertical types. It's ideation around different approaches on how to solve problems. It's actual measurements. It's literally CSVs and Excels and PowerPoints and web recordings and audio recordings and rough notes and spreadsheets, and it's very, very unstructured. And so while GPT has some functionality to be able to upload the disparate formats and artifact types, gluing them all together was darn near impossible. And the other thing is, a lot of this stuff is, we're very, very good stewards of our clients' data, meaning we do not leak it, we do not persist it. And so much of it you just can't upload into an environment like that. And so when finally discovered Storytel, it's sort of an interesting thing, because we can take very, very unique analyses and I can tag them, right? And so that's created this sort of tagging structure over here. So if you think about two major cuts, one is this going to be advertiser focused? Is this work we're going to do, or a proposal I'm going to produce for benefit of a brand client? Produced, tons. We're really deep in like media and entertainment, QSR, finance. And then, or is this on the publisher side, which is CTV, mobile publisher, or is this like out of home, right? And so sort of who's this function, who's this focused at? And then what type of analysis is it, right? And so you'll see just this pretty robust tagging structure. This is probably a quarter of the total tags that are in there. But what it's done is it's taken all of these bespoke pieces of knowledge, and then I can characterize them into, well, what sort of offering is this going to be, right? The tagging structure goes pretty quick. I could walk you through it, but basically you just drag whatever file into it, or use the web tag. And then once you upload it, it gives the optionality to add tags, right? And so if I want to add tags to this, I can choose from what I already have available, or I can create my own. So pretty elegant, goes pretty quick. So what do I do with that? Well, let's actually look at one. So the first thing I like to do also, and one thing that's nice, is define our voice. So whenever I have a piece of material going out that is going to have Foundry on it, I want it to speak in the same language that we like to deliver all of our things in. So we have this prompt up here, which is built in automatically now, where I can just define this in Foundry's voice. And what is that? Yeah, I won't read the whole thing, but basically it's detailed over simplified, it's technical, it's analytical over anecdotal, it's instructional over persuasive, and it's professional, right? So we like to speak very, very straightforward. We don't like to shine folks on. So if we don't know the answer, we speak honestly about it. But we like to provide some precise language on how to get there. So whenever anything goes out the shop, I always like to wrap the voice around it. The first one is, let's boop, boop, boop. So I define my tags up here. Now, just for myself, everything that's analysis or customer focused, regardless of who it's going to, I tag it with a Foundry tag. But there's a bunch of analysis that has only to do with iOS or the SCAD. SCAD, you guys don't have to know what it is, but it's this subset of iOS issues, which is known as the StoreKit ad network. But it's iOS specific. And then I have lots and lots of proposals I've already written, which I've tagged as proposal, right? And so I can put in here, let me zoom this in so you guys can see it a little bit.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, so I've defined my tags. And now I'm just going to say this. Hey, we met last week with a nationwide QSR brand that's aggressively marketing for growth in their app. They're having a hard time closing the loop between the ads they're buying and the performance they're seeing specifically on iOS. Please detail what and how Foundry can help, right? That's it. Pretty simple. The other thing is I don't have to be too precise. It does pretty well with misspellings. You can always fix it if you want, but don't necessarily need to. So let's see what outputs here, given this tag structure. And this doesn't take too long typically. Yep, here we go. All right, so first off, it is showing this in markup right now. So if you guys can see this, there's these little denotions around each of the piece of the output. And so if I click one of these guys, what it's going to do is it's going to say, hey, I retrieved this answer. Here's how I wrote it. And this is your piece of knowledge, and specifically from where in that piece of knowledge I retrieved this from, right? And so for this, it's going to a delivered proposal, and that's where it picked that up from. So sort of interesting. So here's my process is I say, I know what I want sort of in my head. The issue for me is clarity of the delivery. Does this make sense in a way that they're going to understand? So let's take a look at this real quick. So yeah, we can offer a QSR brand optimize, particularly on iOS. Here's how we can assist. Yep, we could do advanced measurement and incremental lift insights. Yep. That's not really applicable here. So I know that I'm going to do a round two. SCAD network consultation. Yep, that is absolutely perfect for what we're talking about here. Fraud mitigation. Yeah, I don't expect to see a lot of fraud given where they're running traffic for this QSR client. I had sort of looked some stuff up, saw where they were running. So I might iterate on that one a little bit. Campaign optimization for sure. Insight packs, maybe not. Real-time analytics and reporting, maybe not. So my next step here would be, hey, for this proposal, this is not applicable and why, and this is not applicable and why. Rewrite it, right? And that produces something sort of like what I ended up getting up here. And I know I'm flying through this quickly, but I had iterated on this a few different times and sort of landed up with this, which was sort of the right approach for this client, right? And so we landed on intent analysis, cohorting of their customers, identifying cost-effective actions, in identifying the influence versus the non-influence customers, detection of unrequested incentivized traffic and bots, et cetera, et cetera. And then because we've done enough of these already, I can say, well, hey, build out a little time frame for this. Given these that we've historically done, what will this look like? And so it'll take a stab at historical analyses we provided. And then from this, based on effort, based on timing, and based on the data I know we'll end up using, I can wrap a financial agreement around it. So
Hey,
yeah, go ahead,
Grant.
Erica. Yep.
Yeah, just to jump in here. So I just want to highlight something that Grant's doing here, that's I think easy to forget in our relatively new world of generative AI, which is you were walking us through, and like not everything in that first response
Yeah.
really, some of it did. You're the expert who knows what is going to fit and what isn't. So one human in the loop, that's Grant, the expert, but also iterative. It's not like, oh, this wasn't 100% right, so I'm going to throw it all out. Like, oh, there's okay, some of this is right and some of it isn't, and I'm going to interact with the AI to move it to the next stage.
Yep. 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 Let's do another one real quick.
Right.
Um, yeah, so for this guy, again, I'm going to write it in the Foundry voice. As soon as I get my prompt that it's ready to write in the voice, I'm going to go on to my next prompt. Yep, good. Yep, we're almost there. Boop, 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 boop. Ready to write. Cool. All right, so for this one, last week, met with a grocery delivery app that's working with a company like Kochava, that does Kochava-like things called AppsFlyer. So this company's had some personnel changes lately, and they realized their attribution logic may not be ideal. We walked them through the types of attribution conversion data we would deliver to help analyze their current attribution waterfall and logic in order to make recommendations on better or worse partners, along with recommending changes to their attribution logic overall. So we anticipate being able to get their total installs attributed and not, along with post-install events. Please list how we can help and the different tools Foundry has that might be applicable. I don't know what's going to output. Let's hit the go button.
And so also we're watching Grant move way beyond just like the summarize prompt, right? So like
Yep.
there's a whole conversation that I see you having with Storytel.
Yep. Yep. Oh, this is a good one. This is great. Perfect.
And what
Yeah.
makes it great?
Yep. It's the accuracy of the answers based on the types of analyses that I would expect. Meaning, if I was handwriting this thing, this is going to be pretty close. So, attribution audit and analysis. So, configurable attribution audit. So this is using our traffic verifier product to understand the time bound in which you're willing to associate an ad that was served and the conversion that it touched, whether that's an install or a deal placed in app or a pizza ordered in the app or a video viewed in the app. All right. Over attribution analysis. It's one of the more powerful things we do. Everybody overpays for the publisher demand. Everybody tends to over attribute, right? And they tend to under attribute in upper funnel sources. So imagine if you were running on two places like web search and billboards, just naturally on digital conversions, search is going to just naturally collect more conversions, although your billboards might actually be doing the work. Fraud detection mitigation, yep, we've already sort of talked about that one. We have lots of ways to custom tailor ways to mitigate the ad fraud. Incremental intent and media lift, knowing the types of signals that would be available, this would be applicable. Some advanced measurement stuff. Yeah, this looks pretty good. So my next step with this would be figuring out the time frame and then figuring out the cost. And so the final artifact, and I can share an example of sort of the output is, having gone through Storytel for this brand, which is an airline brand. As you might imagine, just like folks are spending a lot of money getting people to download their app the first time, brands spend a ton of money trying to get folks who have already downloaded their app to re-download it or otherwise re-engage, right? And re-engagement is really, really tricky, particularly if like you're an airline. If you're flying, let's say Southwest or Delta or United, you might only download the app for just that flight. You get through your flight and then you uninstall it. Well, you've created a bunch of interesting data for that Delta, Southwest, or United to have a conversation with you. And how are they reaching you? And what are the time frames in which they want to reach you. Basically, at the end of the day, there's about 5 levers you can pull within this re-engagement universe. And so for this proposal, it was, hey, we're going to take in all of your data to the lab, and we're going to come back to you with an analysis to tell you how to re-engage better. So we broke that into a primary analysis, which is what is the right sort of window in which I want to have that conversation. Secondary analysis, influence and overlap, meaning you're running a few different re-engagement networks. Are they stepping on each other, or are they all hitting sort of unique universe of customers? And then finally, the third analysis, which is if I had to pick one of these partners, who should I run with and why, right? And so just using, again, sort of our unique approach to this stuff, we know it'll take probably about 12 business days. So let's call that 3 weeks, and then we can price it in at that. So this one we've already done, we've delivered it. We're on our second round of analysis. But what I'd say is to get to sort of this level of something that the client would understand, that uses the same language that they use within their sort of marketing team, that they're willing to, write a check for $20,000 to a 2 or 3 week analysis. The whole thing took about, I don't know, a day, less than a day. And that was from start to finish. Like literally, we have an ask, and then I need to produce a proposal that I think will resonate, and then they actually signed it the day after. So it went very fast.
Okay, so one work day. And how does that compare to the manual process? So if you weren't using Storytel or
Yeah, it gets us, and for anybody who deals with and has to maintain those client relationships, you just don't want to beat them over the head with 1,000 questions. You want to get to a point where you can get to a decision, ideally quick, because you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste their time. And so the first thing is it speeds it up remarkably just because of the precision of delivery. Meaning these are the things is that if I spend 45 minutes prompt engineering to get the right sort of analysis that scratches the itch, then I can send over something that's fairly parsimonious that they're like, yep, makes sense, let's do it. So the time savings it's got to be, it's probably 5 to 1 in terms of just the cycles that you would have to iterate. It's like, is this the right answer? Oh, let me walk you through that again, right? It just saves a ton of time. The thing is, you got to know your stuff, though. I mean, there's no sort of there's no panacea for expertise, right? Like you have to understand, is this the right offering or not? Because otherwise they might not understand it. You might be selling something you can't deliver, and so there is sort of that critical human element to this as well.
Yeah, completely. I think even just to spend a moment on that, I mean, I see that whether AI is involved or not, just and really what in some of our conversations, Grant, what I've heard you say, and maybe you can just kind of correct or whether this resonates or not, is other folks were doing the selling before, but they didn't have the technical acumen of you who's doing the work and the rest of the Foundry team. And so this was essentially brought in-house so that you could be actually knowing exactly what you're selling.
That's right. And it's sort of and I'm trying to think through it from like a go-to-market standpoint where you would normally have a seller function behind, right? You got the quarterback and you got the agent for the quarterback. Well, it sort of turns the quarterback into their own agent to some extent, right? Like it's democratized the tools such that, well, maybe we can get away with a little less overhead in terms of the go-to-market function because we can iterate through the offerings ourselves and deliver them much more elegantly. I absolutely adore our go-to-market team here. And as much as I can do to help them out, that's largely how this is manifested is, hey, dude, I'll write the proposal. I'll take it. No worries. I just need you to deliver it. And so they've greatly appreciated it as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, that feels amazing in terms of that collaboration and alignment there. Yeah, super powerful. And
we've got a question. Yeah, we have a question in chat here is how long does it take to build a proposal? And so I'll talk through how that normally goes is we have a Zoom call with purpose set with the client, whether that's a publisher client, whether that's an advertiser client. We typically record that as long as everybody's cool with it. I have a checklist of questions, which, depending upon sort of their appetite, what we're looking for, what are we trying to do here. From that, I will purposefully state in the recording what I think is the right thing here. Storytel does a really good job of picking that stuff up, and so these proposals have gone as fast as just 20 minutes. Some of them need to iterate over a couple days, but as long as you know the right questions to ask and you've captured the right artifacts, it goes very, very quick, very quick.
Amazing. Right. It is all dependent on the quality of the data that you have uploaded.
Yep, 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 yep.
Completely.
So what else? Like, what questions do we have from the group? I'm sort of curious on what sort of industries we're representing in terms of the ability or the need of writing proposals. You know, proposals are always going to be sort of unique and bespoke and so much, you know, by vertical industry and things like that. But typically, you're going to have a client side and you're going to have the pitch side. You're going to have what it is you're pitching, which could be one thing or it could be a combination of many things. And as well as you can describe those many things into sort of unique buckets, that's my tagging structure in Storytel. The other nice part about Storytel is we have an army of other folks. I say an army, it's 4 people, but I can take all of that knowledge and I can just share it directly with my org. I can share it directly with the Foundry org, right? And so we don't all have to be uploading the same piece of knowledge over and over again. We can benefit from the wisdom of the crowd here.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, I hear like a de-siloing and maybe minimal effort there, but also to what you were saying before, there's the efficiency side of like, okay, less time, but also effectiveness of really getting that personalization. Like I'm almost hearing a difference between like a cold calling, cold pitching, like pretty general versus, hey, this is for you. I've built this for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is always really interesting if you can pull in some of their own data to help tell that story as well. Because typically, you know, all these proposals have been born from, yes, we've taken a look at your data and something, right? And so things tend to resonate when it has to deal with them and is a little less abstract. And so as much as we can pull in even the client's language in terms of, well, what things are you tracking and what are you looking for and what are your initiatives and what are your campaign names and what sort of creative are you running and things like that, helps and makes it feel really unique to them.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I was talking to the CEO of Zeit, the kind of live stream and async, video recording and screenshot app. And, he was saying the difference even on something as small as getting a live pitch and the deck, like his company name is spelled wrong. It was like,
Yeah.
like, okay, well, if you're not even gonna spell my company name
Yeah,
correctly.
come on, you got to care a little.
Yeah, so we would love to get more questions. I see some in Q&A here, one from Margot. So strategies used to simplify complex client requirements into clear and actionable proposal elements.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a magic wand to be able to do that. That is largely the trick. Is how can I take this really, really complex analysis? Again, we've typically covered that within the recording, which becomes an artifact that I upload as knowledge, and simplify it into something that feels much more like a tear sheet on an SOW order, right? Can we make it that sort of elegant and that clear? It is a fine balance between, hey, I'm going to write you a 10-page essay that describes everything we're going to do and somewhat picky in detail, between that and, hey, look, here are the 5 things we're trying to fix, and this is why it matters. And so I've been trying to take this 10-page thing and squeeze it into this more like 2-page thing. Here's the specific things we're going to do, and here's the needles it's going to move.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think it's something really powerful about starting with that 10-page space versus I'm just trying to fill out 2 pages. Like it brings in all the acumen and
Which is
expertise.
nice too. And I've spent a ton of time doing that. Like it's weird. I look like an insane mental patient in my office sometimes because I'll just record myself starting to deliver things. And it's
Mm,
this again, it could be a 45-minute unstructured me talking to myself with a lot of slideware. But that I load that up into a piece of knowledge and that can get whipped into a one-page deliverable pretty quick. And so I
wow.
spend a lot of time doing that. And it sounds like a time suck. It is a time saver because if I can, that me talking was for 45 minutes, me script engineering was 15. I only spent an hour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's so like the opposite of just like staring at the tyranny of the blank page and like, where do I go from here?
Yeah, and oftentimes it's the questions are so broad you don't know where to start. And so you can start with there, like, hey, help me. I need to ideate 5 possible things I can do given X, Y, and Z, and then start iterating from that. So just in terms of discovery of my own product, it's been useful.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's see. I'm also seeing like what around client feedback, like how does that get incorporated into your proposal? And I don't know if that's part of the your process with Storytel, but maybe you draft something, you share it, it doesn't land 100%,
That's
then
interesting. I've just started with that. Ask me
oh,
again in maybe a month or two. And so if we think about sort of this whole proposal thing, this is sort of a new manifestation in the past probably 4 or 5 months. We're finally at a point, or I'm finally at a point where we've had enough of these initial ones where we can go and do a little bit of a post-mortem on them. The one thing I've found is even though the language can get very, very specific, and this might be a little just unique to our team, review it with your team that you can actually do it, right? Um, because even though you can do it in one case, not necessarily you can do it in every case. And so again, it gets back to that expertise thing. Just know what you're signing your team up for. So, and just full transparency, there's been one of these where I got us in a bit of trouble. I was like, geez, you're right, we can't do that. And that was one of the earlier ones of like, or if we were to do it, quite frankly, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
mm,
Is sort of where it was on that, meaning the vast amount of data we would have to input would produce a very sort of interesting answer that's nice to have if you had it, but it's not that interesting. And so there's sort of that like, hey, make sure that you can actually do the thing that you're signing up for.
right.
That it's
Yeah,
the same. I'm not sure AI helps that in one way or the other, but just being honest, it got me in trouble before.
for sure. I mean, who hasn't experienced that with sales that something gets sold that's like, that's not built
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yet.
yeah,
We can't
yeah,
do that. So yeah, the importance of consulting your team on these as well.
for sure. But
Awesome.
and again, even then, it produced a new artifact which I could then upload, which has now sort of been keeping us clean around that specific topic. So even then, we produced some knowledge that was useful.
Great, amazing. Any any other questions from folks joining? I'm sure we are not all in the same industry, unless it's an ad tech crowd, and if so, that's awesome. But yeah, anything else that shows up. I think there's one around like how do you really identify the specific needs of your clients? I think just just thinking about customer calls I'm on, some things get expressed and some things do not. Um,
Yeah, I don't, maybe, that's maybe the wisdom of having just spent a ton of time in the space, the right questions to ask.
yeah.
Um, Being honest, it can be a while to get there, right? In fact, it might be a couple calls to get there, particularly with somebody who's sort of just new to this industry. We see that on the agency side a lot. There's a whole sort of agency nuance, which we could talk about here as well. But it's you just got to know your stuff. You got to have that right sort of who, what, when, where, why question checklist to get through. Um, yeah, that'd be the big one from my perspective.
Yep, yep, yep. That makes sense. Well, maybe as definitely welcoming more questions to come in. And in the meantime, Angela, and could you just share this story, our beta, just share your screen and show our beta in action.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, fun.
so right. So the beta, and so Grant, I know you've checked it out, and it doesn't have the full feature set yet, of everything that Grant has showed us, of the tags and the many files, etc. So this is one way. You've got multiple ways you can interact. And Angela, if you could zoom in so we could just see the prompt bar here. So we took everything from our, original platform that you were just seeing to have that ethos as we, built the code base from scratch here. So this is a Mad Libs approach, which you can try of like, oh, is there something, specific that you want to do? I want to analyze a particular file to explain it to an executive audience, for instance. Um, and there's different options. That's one way. If that doesn't work for you, you can just delete that, um, and type in something else. And then so Angela has scrolled down here so you can see work, life, and play. So for instance, if we went in work to sales, we have a lot of what we're trying to do here is make the prompting easier for you, because I have once said that prompting is like a hammer to the face, for some people, right? Because it's a skill that we're learning. And so here's all these different personas. And so we could just keep going towards sales. Um, and see, are there prompts here that are interesting for you or that work for you? And if so, selecting one, and it's just going to take you through the process as opposed to figuring it all out on your own. So yeah, if there was a pitch deck that you wanted to analyze, from start or not, you
Yes.
just go right through this process. And yeah, you could go ahead and hit send, and it's going to say, okay, great, we're going to dive in. So first you need to upload something. So a lot of the magic in AI actually comes with when you're working on your own data. You can always do things outside of that. But and just like our original platform, this is through the enterprise APIs, no training on your data whatsoever. That's our promise to you. But just wanted folks to get a glimpse of our beta, and we'll be building out the feature set. So Grant, hopefully before the end of the year, we'll migrate you over.
Heck yeah, fun.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll just see if there's anything new. Great. Anything else that you want to share, Grant, or any advice around using Storytel or AI for work?
Yeah, if you don't know anywhere else to start, the canned prompts are typically pretty good at just sort of kickstarting you into a bit of a flow. So if you literally don't know where else to start, just upload it and smash one of the summary buttons, and from there you can start to ideate. Is typically my if I literally don't know where else to start, that's what I do.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing is defining your own voice. It's good to sound unique, understand how you sound, and build that in. That's very important for us. Um, the things that we're starting to work on now a little bit is the actual analysis portion, and so more to follow on that. Most of what we do is not actual proposal writing; it's actually doing the analysis, and so I'm excited to see what the meat that we put on the bones there as well, and we made some pretty good progress. So yeah, super cool. Again, the thing is, and the thing that I just couldn't ever do in any other GPT platform was just the disparate knowledge, right? First off, I don't want to share it with anything public. I need to keep this in an asserted private environment that I know cannot leak. But I do want to be able to share it with my team, and I do want to be able to glue it all together.
Mm.
And so, quite frankly, the only tool that I've seen that fits the bill is so far Storytel.
Amazing. Yeah, Storytel's here to glue it all together for you, to be that glue. Thank you so much,
Thank
Grant.
you.
sharing your process, and good luck with your next proposal. We will work on the CSV side of things. So Storytel is great for unstructured data, and we're working on the structured data side of the house too. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will share the recording with you. And yeah, just keep the questions and the feedback coming. Okay. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
everybody. Appreciate it.